As we ate our snack, the conversation shifted to lighter and more trivial matters. I knew our evening had reached its climax and the summit had been scaled with success and much enlightenment. As I drove her home, she became quiet and reflective, perhaps turning over in her mind what she had said and what she wanted to say more emphatically, but could not. I suggested I call in sick. Did you ever call in sick for work in your life?
Call at work?
You said I suggested I call in sick. Did you ever call in sick?
No. I had a good record. Sick day, never took a day off, never late. And I had 3 jobs. I worked at the Kimberly. I worked at 2 laundromats. Wow. And I did all housework, all the work at home.
I suggested I call in sick and we could talk some more, for I was enjoying myself immensely and did not want it to end. She would have none of it, stating that I should not jeopardize my job. She did not want to be part of it. Her whole complete change of thought and attitude had me thoroughly perplexed and struggling to adjust to her new behavior. As I reached her home, she reached over, kissed me lightly on the cheek, scampered out of the car saying nothing more about seeing you in the morning, and hurried up the porch steps into the house. You think that house is still there today?
Well, on Royal Avenue, yeah. It's an old house. Houses are there on 3063, probably a mess. You got the 3rd generation people living there now.
I thought about that night at work, about all the events earlier with Rose, and endeavored to reach some plausible conclusion regarding it. What puzzled me the most was a complete change in her attitude. What changed her so? That morning, Rose was waiting for me on the road leading to work, and she looked enticing and desirable in her skirt and short coat. She greeted me warmly and wanted me to know how work went. I answered by telling her how great she looked, and she was pleased at my remarks. "Can I see you tonight?" she blurted out. Before I could think of the repercussions, I quickly said yes. We talked for several minutes more until she had to leave before she'd be late for work. She said hurriedly, 7 tonight at my house. I watched as she walked down the road with her graceful, and her stride was determined and assured, much more assured than I was at this juncture of our relationship. I had told Mother I was going to another union meeting. So this is the second union meeting you're going to in 2 nights. Did your mother get suspicious?
Yeah. Well, I didn't come home late. I didn't come home around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
I told my mother I was going to another union meeting until 10 p.m. and left it at that. She did not say much, thinking it's reasonable since I had to work at 11:30. I was beginning to feel like Lookie, always dashing out and never being around. As I pulled up to Rose's house, I half expected her to come dashing out, but waiting several seconds, I went up to the front door, rang the doorbell. Rose answered and invited me in. She told me her parents went out for the evening and thought we could spend an evening here if it was agreeable. I had no objections, and she took my jacket and returned shortly. We sat together on a couch. She turned on the table radio of all the music stations, and the big
we were smooching. Smooching. No sex, just smooching.
Okay, this is a family show now. Big bands brought back memories from the distant past. I felt comfortable with her. As a matter of fact, I was becoming more attracted to her each time. She had a dark skirt with white short sleeves and magnified her breast and figure. As she sat there, crossed her legs, her skirt was above her knees. I remarked that this was better than driving around, and it was more home-like. She smiled and agreed, and while looking at me to find an answer to a puzzling question, I took her hand in mine as I held it. I wanted to see you tonight and continue our conversation we had last night, she exclaimed at her other hand on mine. She said she went out to say she had much misjudged me, something terrible, when she first met. I thought you were like most of the people at work, brash and brazen. But I soon discovered that you were different, and I liked what I saw. I listened intently, trying to find some indication as where her thoughts and feelings were leading. She still wanted something better than what she had now, and the statement struck a nerve in me. She was determined to rid herself of her present condition, the obvious and discernible, but she had the same problem I encountered. No solution to her predicament. She went on to say her thought of me as my friend and perhaps much more than that. She knew that I would never knowingly do anything detrimental to her well-being and that I looked out for her best interest. I lay back my head on the couch and stared at the ceiling, absorbing what she had said. She later put her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "We're alike, both of us. We come from the same background, have the same likes and dislikes, and neither of us can find an answer to what is troubling us. No matter how hard we try, this is what attracts us to each other, are struggling to find an answer to our dilemma." As I listened to her, that she was correct in everything she was saying, but I gladdened my heart to hear it repeated from someone else other than myself. I now had some of the answers I was seeking regarding Rose, abrupt change in behavior. She now considered me a friend and more. I delighted in her assumption, thinking perhaps this would be the first real break since coming home. Here at last I had a companion I could entrust my inner thoughts and desires to, someone I could relate to and take into my confidence. I jumped up. It was 11 p.m., and we had been talking all this while, and the time had quickly withered away. Again I proposed my suggestion to call in sick, but Rose only smiled as she walked me to the store. I stopped and turned. As we faced each other, I gazed into her eyes, and for the moments, the saddened look, so I quickly realized was gone. In this place was a hope and a yes of happiness. I took her in my arms and kissed her tenderly. Good night,
All
Claire.
right, Claire.
Watch out for the cables.
Watch the wires.
Yeah.
Take care, Claire.
No.
Yeah. To be back.
Good night, Claire.
Night, Claire. She was seeing voices this morning.
Huh?
She was seeing voices heard voices this morning. He's way over there.
Machine's recording.
This?
Yeah.
How's she gonna pick that up?
I don't know. I laid back, okay. I listened to her and I could, that she was correct in everything she was saying. See you in the morning, she whispered, kissing me gently on the cheek. Let me call in sick, I pleaded. She only smiled and said, good night. I tried to wipe the lipstick she had implanted on my lips with her fingers. No one at work knew I was seeing Rose, and I dare say, Rose never told any of her acquaintances at work of our relationship. There was none of the petty gossip and snide remarks regarding our friendship, which was so prevalent in a closely quartered organization such as ours.
Now there was another character in this picture. Beverly worked there too. Beverly was a scheduler. And she made up the scheduler for the crews, how they worked and everything else. And then I hooked up with her too.
Oh yeah, and how was Beverly? A nice lady?
Huh?
Was
Yeah,
Beverly,
but the two of them never knew I was interchanging.
Oh, okay.
I never talked to her. I never.
They worked in the same office, right?
No, I didn't work in it. I worked in the damn bill.
Beverly and Rose worked in the same office.
They worked in the same office, yeah.
So what finally happened with Beverly?
Beverly, I told you she hooked up with the guy from, one of the guys from the work there, went to Wisconsin.
Whatever happened to Rose?
Rose, she did the same thing. Maybe a year later, she said, "I'm going to do the same thing. He's not going to come around. He's not going to go to school or nothing." So she went to she got transferred. Went to a guy for the work,
Okay.
from the office.
Is that where the main office for Kimberly was in Wisconsin?
No, yeah, Wisconsin, yeah,
Do you remember what city?
Wisconsin.
What state? What city? What city in Wisconsin? Do you remember?
What city?
Yeah, what city in Wisconsin? Do you remember?
It was a small town, farm town.
Was it Madison?
No, I don't know. I don't
okay.
know. I forget.
All right. Everyone seemed to know everyone's else business, or private or otherwise. This was continually going on in our work environment.
You mean they knew our business?
No, everyone in the office was trying to know everyone's business. And events have got pretty much routine. Mother was still working at the usual place, and Sally would be graduating shortly from high school. Lukey was still in the air station, but there was talk of closing it down in a year or so. Steve would be graduating next summer, and I was curious to see what his plans were and where he would be working.
Yeah, he graduated and went right to California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Events at home had gotten pretty much routine. Mother would scream at Lookie when he would come home late, usually drunk, and not go to work the next day. After the initial outburst, she would remain silent for several days. It was frustrating and nerve-wracking to put up with her behavior and her sulky moods. She would admonish Lookie for not contributing money to keep the upkeep of the house, and was continually after him, stating that he was living here for free while others supported
Well,
him.
look, he worked in the silver bowling alley.
So, what did he do in the bowling alley?
Well, I don't know. He had that girlfriend Adeline was following him around all the time. I think she forced herself on him.
No kidding.
I don't think he really got involved with her, but she kept forcing Adeline.
Where did he meet her at?
Huh?
Where did he meet her at?
Adeline?
Yeah.
Well, she's a Pollock. She used to come and visit my mother. Not Adeline, but the mother, and Adeline would drive him down or something.
During this episode, I tried to remain away from my immediate vicinity and talk as little as possible, anticipate her wishes for the best. Never to say anything to Lookie relevant to his behavior, as he would only become antagonistic. For some strange reason, he would shut us all aside and prevail in his own little private world.
Well, he ran away from home. I used to pick him up all the time, the cops and I. Pay the post.
To get out of the house, I would usually go to the library in the evening and spend hours reading and enjoying the quiet atmosphere, contemplating my future, which never came to a fruitful conclusion.
Now, that's where I met Beverly from the tape from the University of Buffalo.
Oh, okay.
She was on an industrial program the college had them on, and she worked at international. She worked at Kimberly, but she worked at the other mill. I never got an access to that, but I knew she worked there.
Wow. Seeing Rose during this time helped me considerably, and I was also always thankful for it. I would at times drive around the town for an hour or so, and then return home by 10 p.m., observing the atmosphere around the house. If everything was relatively calm, I would do some reading, newspapers or magazines, and retire about midnight. If Mother was in a cantankerous mood, I would listen to her sarcastic verbiage until she got tired and retired, and wait for the next round when Lookie would come home about 2 a.m. I was getting rather dispirited of the entire charade, but then again, I had no alternative, nor did I anticipate any. So your mother was yelling and screaming. She got tired and went to bed.
Well, yeah, well, she was living alone. Her husband passed away.
And then
That would be the worst thing I could do, leave her.
And then about 2 hours later,
Dookie comes back to the
raising hell.
and throw up on the floor and go to bed.
We never talked much about work or any other people there. Neither one of us had special friends at work. We usually sat several minutes during my midnight shift before I went to work, which I thought was the most productive as far as airing our viewpoints. Seeing one another each morning was pleasurable, and I looked forward to it, especially when I sensed she had made a more deliberate effort to look enticing and alluring for our meeting. It gave me a warm feeling to know that someone cared enough to go the extra mile to please me, and I greatly appreciate it. When I worked the afternoon shift, we hardly met. I can recall only one time when I saw her briefly. It was Sunday afternoon when she went with her sister to watch her sister's husband practice at Gill Creek Field, not far from where I lived. We only talked briefly, and it was cold, and her sister kind of added to the situation. We did not communicate too well when the other people were about. On my day shift, which in many ways was similar to the times I was on midnights, we would meet early in the evening and drive around or even take in a movie. We would both be home by 11 at the latest. I might add, Mother suspected I was seeing someone, but never said much about it. I suspected she was content that I was not coming home drunk. On my long weekend, which cycled around about a month, I would see Rose Friday, Saturday, Monday nights. For some strange reason, we reserved Sunday. She would reserve Sunday to wash her hair, do her laundry, and whatever else women do for themselves. I was becoming attached to Rose in more ways than I would care to admit, and I felt our relationship was coming to a turning point. She wanted me to do something with my life, and I was frustrated at no end that I could not come up with a plausible solution. I could sense the only yearnings and desires creeping into our conversation once again. Her distant and distinct for her present state of affairs, her striving to overcome them. She wanted to make a life with me, but much different from the one we were both living. She talked about me getting into management. And transferring to another mill on another site. She confided in me that she knew people in the upper management had offered me several positions at the time, but I was very reluctant to accept. I shrugged it off as much talk, and I could see that it was an earnest and quite serious in this avenue of approach. I knew it was detrimental to our relationship, my not finding a way out of our predicament, and it frustrated me completely, but I felt helpless and ineffective. I could not make an objective decision regarding my welfare without bringing a great deal of extraneous matters. Oh boy. They are superficial on the surface, but forcibly determine how it's influenced. Rose would become frustrated at the times and downright angry, and with me I would present to my reasons for not breaking. Hey, hi Fred, how you doing?
You seen voices this morning.
Okay.
How you doing?
Here comes Claire.
Who else?
That's it.
Hey, hi Claire, how you doing?
Come on, watch the wires.
Chair for you, Claire.
I
Watch
reserved
the
this
water,
chair for
Claire.
you.
That's how you behave yourself.
Huh?
That's what I used to tell the kids when I went into the classrooms.
Nice to see you again, Claire.
Briefly, I just wanted to make sure you were doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Claire, do you want an ice water?
Thanks.
No, nice what?
Candy.
There's some nuts there.
Thank you, thank you.
There was, I would never reveal my entire ramifications of my family life, but I was astute enough to penetrate and discern that reality was. She agreed with some of my objections, but was adamant in breaking away and striking out on my own. I admired her toward me. At the time, she reminded me of Renee. She, Rose, would reprimand me severely for being so timorous regarding my family responsibilities and obligations. And the next moment, she would say softly that was the very reason she was attracted to me. Most of the time we were together, the subject of family relationships were never mentioned or discussed, but attaining our entire association was a focal point of both of our thoughts and desires. It was never too far out of reach, always just below the surface, and at times it would bubble up and be thrashed about, and then descend below the surface once again. One night we sat watching the lights change at the falls. I held her closely and gently kissed her several times. I remarked that what really mattered was how we felt about each other, and everything else was secondary. She agreed, and then she bored her head into my shoulder, sobbing softly, and murmured, "I do not want to live on Royal Avenue."
Yeah,
She said, "I do not want to live on Royal Avenue
yeah.
and watch you go to work on the midnight shift like my father and my sister."
Yeah, I still want to be a mill wife.
I couldn't stand or live like that.
Yeah, he's right. She's right.
She reached up and kissed me, her eyes moist and lips were trembling as she touched mine. I held her tightly in the moment, and I knew that I lost her to a world I would never know or understand. Several nights later, and several days before Christmas, Rose told me she was leaving her parents and was getting married to someone in the office. She had known this person for some time, but never dated or seen him outside the work environment. Naturally, I was stunned at what she was telling me, and I found it difficult to comprehend her reasoning our decision. I asked her how she felt about him, and she just suggested that he was a decent, level-headed person, but had formed no emotional bond with him. "That will come later," she sighed. That isn't important. What isn't important is making up my mind to do what I want to, leaving your present state, and then." I gave her my feelings on the matter, and she felt she should give herself some more time or think or sort it out. She quickly replied that she had taken too much time deciding on it, and I did not help matters much. I knew she was basing her whole decision on strictly a social criteria. In a way, I did not blame her. I did not dwell on the subject, for I knew it was much more difficult for her than she was displaying. She said nothing about a relationship. Presumably it was difficult and heart-wrenching for her to break away, as it was for me. I had resigned myself to the fact I had lost her, and there was nothing I could do or say that would change her decision. I was convinced and apprehensive about what she was contemplating, and thought much unlike her to do something of that nature. I tried to skirt around the approach at another angle by asking if there was something I could do in aiding her decision. She looked for me at the moment, turning her head away, and replied, "I wanted you to do something for the longest time, but your indecisiveness forced me into this decision." She was right. I felt responsible for the action she was taking. What could I say? What could I do to change her mind about the drastic action she was about to undertake? Think about it a little more, I pleaded with her. You're not pressed for time. Give it a while. Maybe you'll see things in a different perspective. She said nothing, and I could feel that she had made up her mind, and nothing I was about to say would change that. I don't have many friends, she said, nor do I date much. I'm pretty much a loner like you. I read a lot and try to be like people I work with, but I've always had a difficult time trying to play that role. I didn't fit into their little world that they created, but I could not find a niche in life until you came along. I was always played the part of an observer and passively experienced the life I never felt any great attachment to. As she spoke, I held her hand. It was trembling and cold, and I wished desperately that I could extradite her from her path that she had chosen for herself. She became aloof and almost reverted into the defensive behavior she displayed when I first met her. I failed her in my failure to I had failed myself. I lost her through my nature, and I had many times before. She sat there stoically to my present, and when we reached the house, she opened the car door and immediately walked to the front door and entered, never once looking back. That was the last time I spoke to Rose. When my midnight shift would come around, I thought I might see and talk to her once again, but she never was on the road to work. I would see Rose occasionally in a cafeteria, and our eyes would meet for a split second, and then they would turn quickly. In that split second, I saw the sadness return once again to her eyes, and my heart went out to her. I wanted to mollify the hurt and devastation I caused her, but I knew that was impossible. There was nothing I could do. My behavior had sealed her fate. That summer, Rose was married in her local church and left for Wisconsin. Was that St. Stanislaus Church?
Yes,
The Polish church?
she married that guy in the office.
Was he Polish?
The guy in the office?
Yeah.
No.
Good night, Claire.
Good night.
Good night.
Take care of
She
yourself.
had enough of this nonsense.
Good night, Claire.
Take care.
So what church was it, St. Stan's or Holy Rosary?
Holy Rosary.
I see.
Yeah, see. What was he going to do?
Good night, Claire.
We're down to 2 minutes.
How many?
2.
All right. I would see occasionally, our disc is running out, I gotta talk fast. I would see occasionally in the cafeteria. That summer, Rose was married in her local church and left for Wisconsin the following day. I never saw her again, nor did I ever get any news of her new life. I would see her father at the mill, and we would wave, but we would never talk. Several years later, he retired, and that left his only son-in-law working at the mill. He never talked about Rose, and I never inquired, even though I was curious to know what was getting along. Mother never knew about Rose or any other woman I saw before I married. She suspected I was seeing someone, but kept it to herself. I've always got the distinct impression that she felt I should marry or seek a life of my own, but continue the status quo here indefinitely. Good night. She felt it was my duty, I was compelled to abide by this code of conduct. Steve and Lookie were never held to the strict standard, and I dare say it never entered their mind.
What about Lookie?
Steve and Lookie were never held to the strict standard, and I dare say it never entered their minds, let alone acting on anything of this nature. Is it still ticking, or is it out?
Yep.
How many seconds?
1.
I was greatly distraught at Rose's departure, so I truly missed her and often wonder what kind of life we would have had if things had worked out differently. I do not believe I had changed,
10 seconds.
would change anything. Certainly, Rose would have not condoned Mother's behavior, okay? Give me the pen, I'll mark it right here. So you're on a